Starbucks has received global recognition and remains the coffee king of the world, serving up nearly 4 billion cups of coffee worldwide every year. This corporate giant brought in an astonishing $12 billion in revenue last year alone and makes up nearly 40% of the world's coffee market share. But even with having reached the levels of success and notoriety Starbucks has throughout the world, there are many things they would rather not talk about. Here are the 5 things Starbucks doesn't want you to know. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Nutritional Information. While most people don't expect to come out of a Starbucks feeling victorious about sticking with their diets, most people don't realize just how much that daily latte is sabotaging their efforts. People often justify their indulgence as their one guilty pleasure they can give into daily. I mean, it's not like they're devouring a quarter pounder every day, right? Well, don't be so sure. While Starbucks doesn't hide the nutritional information about their products from the public, the laws surrounding the labeling and posting of nutritional information are not as strict as those required of the fast food industry, where chains like McDonald's are required to post the caloric amounts of each menu item on the menu itself. So it may come as a shock to learn the fattening truth behind the world's favorite coffee giant. A grande peppermint white chocolate mocha contains an insane 540 calories, far surpassing the quarter pounder from McDonald's, which is 417 calories. Love the Frappuccino? Ordering your favorite Frappuccino can add 560 to 600 calories to your daily intake. And what about those wonderful looking pastries that tempt you while standing in line to order? The Starbucks cinnamon chip scone has an astonishing 480 calories. So if you order your grande peppermint white chocolate mocha and a cinnamon chip scone for breakfast, expect to take in an insane 1,020 calories for breakfast. You'd have to run on a treadmill for 90 minutes to burn off your cup of Morning Joe and scone. But let's compare the Starbucks breakfast to the McDonald's Egg McMuffin meal, which includes an Egg McMuffin sandwich with cheese, an order of hash browns, and a McDonald's peppermint white chocolate mocha, which has a total of 727 calories for the entire meal. But it gets worse. We haven't even touched on the sugar content yet. A hot venti grape mulled fruit contains an astonishing 25 teaspoons of sugar, compared to the suggested daily sugar intake of only 6 teaspoons set by the American Heart Association. And what about the caffeine? A grande Starbucks coffee has 320 milligrams of caffeine compared to a 12-ounce can of Red Bull, which only has 111 milligrams of caffeine. That's almost 3 times the amount of caffeine before you even start adding in those extra shots of espresso. With everyone taking in that insane amount of coffee, it's no wonder we all experience a bit of road rage sitting in traffic on the way to work. Number 4. Covert coffee shops. Even with Starbucks being the world-renowned corporate coffee giant, it does have its fair share of opposition. Some people simply will not step foot inside of a Starbucks and choose to support local mom-and-pop style coffee shops instead. There's a culture out there that lives by the mantra, just say no to corporate coffee. And with the number of Starbucks defectors on the rise, the corporate coffee giant has had to take action in order to stay in the coffee game and not suffer any profit losses. While those who oppose Starbucks see their valiant efforts as noble, as if they're David fighting the giant Goliath, they've been unknowingly supporting the brand this whole time, giving Starbucks the last laugh on opposition. Starbucks has been operating under the disguise of local mom-and-pop coffee shops for a couple of decades, recognizing that there is a real Starbucks counterculture and ingeniously cashing in on their own opposition movement. And whether or not you agree with their business decision to operate as local small-time coffee shops, you have to admit, it's a pretty crafty strategy. Starbucks often pops up seemingly independent coffee shops all over the world, and you may notice the phrase "inspired by Starbucks" somewhere in the independent coffee shop and often on any marketing propaganda they distribute. Other than that little bit of tricky wordplay, Starbucks makes every effort to keep their branding and image far away from these independent coffee shops, and unsuspecting boycotters of the brand are tricked into giving the corporate giant their hard-earned money anyway. even when consumers think they're supporting the little guy on Main Street in their hometowns. This is probably the best case of corporate smoke and mirrors policy to trick the everyday consumer into continuing to get their caffeine fix from them, even when consumers have sworn off Starbucks altogether. While this is highly deceptive and manipulative, you have to admit it's a pretty genius strategy to ensure you remain profitable. Number 3. Workers' rights and workplace law violations. It seems that every time you walk into a Starbucks, you're greeted with a friendly smile and a warm hello. You watch as the employees happily work on your beverage, and you're left with the assumption that Starbucks is a great place to work for and all the employees are happy to be there making your coffee. But the truth is, most Starbucks employees are miserable, underpaid, and are often thrust into the center of legal battles over breaks, overtime pay, tip sharing practices, discrimination, and more. Starbucks has been the target of multiple workers' rights lawsuits, and it doesn't seem there's any sign of Starbucks changing their ways anytime soon. Oftentimes, they simply settle out of court to avoid legal fees and negative publicity, and are never really held accountable and forced to change the way they treat their employees. In 2008, Starbucks settled and was made to pay millions of dollars to 360 workers who sued the giant for being forced to work overtime without proper overtime compensation as required by law. In 2009, Starbucks paid out $120,000 to a former technical engineer to settle a lawsuit that alleges the African-American man was subjected to racial discrimination and retaliation so severe that it required him to take a medical leave of absence. The man was so disgusted at the settlement that he refused to cash the check until Starbucks obtained a settlement enforcement order from the local courts to force the man to cash his settlement check. In 2012, Starbucks was under fire for forcing employees to work overtime without being paid the overtime rates as outlined in the worker rights laws. That same year, Starbucks paid out an $18 million settlement to several baristas in Massachusetts over tip sharing practices that contradicted Massachusetts laws that stated managers could not participate in the sharing of the tip jars. In 2014, 3 Oregon employees sued Starbucks for what they called a phantom wage of 50 cents per hour was illegally added to their pay stubs to account for tips they received, whether the employees received tips or not. It seems Starbucks has a lot of explaining to do when it comes to how they treat their loyal employees, and maybe, just maybe, if Starbucks paid their employees a livable wage, they wouldn't be mixed up in their employees fighting over the pocket change at the bottom of the tip jar. Just saying. Number 2. Unsustainable practices. Starbucks was born in Seattle, Washington, located in the Pacific Northwest region of the United States. The Pacific Northwest is known for its extreme liberal views on environmental issues, and residents are often referred to as tree huggers. So it's no surprise that Starbucks has jumped on the green bandwagon and often boasts about its green corporate practices, which includes sustainable practices and recycling. Starbucks spends millions of dollars annually on this image and the propaganda they distribute in their stores. In 2013, Starbucks was publicly outed for its contradictory practices that includes the use of palm oil in their products. The amount of palm oil Starbucks uses has meant the deforestation of over 50% of the forests in Indonesia and Malaysia to make room for palm oil plantations to keep up with the demand of the corporate giant. It is estimated that 50,000 orangutans have been killed due to the deforestation of these areas of the world, along with countless other species. National Geographic has even taken steps to keep this information at the forefront, refusing to let Starbucks quietly sweep this one under the rug. They've joined forces with an activist group called Some of Us, which has committed to take legal action against Starbucks for their deceptive advertising on environmental issues. Starbucks is also taking heat for the recyclability of their coffee cups. It's reported that Starbucks uses around 4 billion cups every year worldwide, which is equivalent to 1.6 million trees being cut down to make their signature single-use coffee cups. And what's even more alarming is that Starbucks coffee cups can't be recycled due to the process used to make the cups, which includes the use of polyethylene. Polyethylene is used to seal the cups, which helps to keep the paper cup from disintegrating when hot coffee is added. This polyethylene coating makes it impossible for a Starbucks Starbucks cup to decompose in the landfills, meaning those billions of cups that end up in the landfill every year will remain there forever. And just to make matters a little worse, Starbucks doesn't even use recycled materials to manufacture their cups. With over 1.5 million trees being cut down every year just for Starbucks coffee cups, which can't be recycled or reused in any way, how many forests is Starbucks gonna be responsible for clearing in the name of profitability? To combat the negative light on their coffee cups, Starbucks publicly states that they make every effort to push the sales of reusable travel mugs that can be washed and used over and over again. Number 1. Starbucks often loses in blind taste tests. Ask a loyal Starbucks customer why they choose Starbucks over the competition, and they overwhelmingly say that they have the best tasting coffee in the world. Starbucks even gloats about having the best tasting coffee in the world, and with billions of dollars in annual sales, you might even agree with that statement. But you'd be surprised to know that when it comes to independent blind taste tests, Starbucks seems to fall short of expectations and often comes in dead last. When stripped of their logo and branding image, they often do terribly against some surprising coffee contenders. Back in 2007, Starbucks made headlines when it lost in a blind taste test to the most unlikely of competitors, McDonald's. Consumer Reports reported that not only did McDonald's coffee rate better overall in the blind taste test, it was a fraction of the price of Starbucks coffee, with the average cup of Starbucks coffee selling for around $6 a cup, and McDonald's sells their coffee for an average of just $1 per cup. The Bold Italic, a popular online magazine for the San Francisco Bay Area, conducted a similar taste test, and Starbucks rated dead last in taste competition. And to make matters worse, Starbucks was horribly beat by the popular grocery store brand Folgers, and not by some ultra-trendy specialty coffee roaster. GeekWire, a Seattle-based tech news magazine, conducted a similar taste test in 2016 and was beat yet again by Folgers coffee. No doubt, it was a pretty terrible blow to the sophisticated coffee giant. Cosmopolitan magazine even conducted a blind taste test of Starbucks' best-selling seasonal drink, the pumpkin spice latte. The magazine pitted Starbucks against pumpkin spice lattes from McDonald's and Dunkin' Donuts. Not only did Starbucks lose the challenge, but taste testers said that Starbucks pumpkin spice latte tasted like a Yankee Candle. Appetizing. Hope you enjoyed the video, folks. If you did, make sure you click that subscribe button before you head out if you're new. That's all you have to do. Come on, just click it. I know you want to. Oh, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. I heard it gives you superpowers in the future or something. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.